gets that finger-licking goodness from a legal lolly, gets arm bit off, then has divine intervention instead of feeling pain. Sounds about right. This episode confirmed the test tube baby theory. All of our parasites, all of our characters are pretty much clones. That's what they are. So that has effectively been confirmed now with this episode. But there is one thing I know everybody is talking about. It's a big thing I know that is a heavy debated topic right now. Everyone's discussing it. 02 is the daughter of Dr. Frank. Now, this theory, or what was mentioned, it seems very plausible. It seems like that's most likely the case. It's probably about 99% accurate, I would assume. But there is an off chance of something else going down, which I will get into. But before that, though, the reason why everybody thinks that 02 is the daughter of Dr. Frank is because at the end of the episode, he was tasked with getting DNA from the Klaxosaur queen, or princess. He grabbed the hair, had it in his hand when he woke up in the hospital, and obviously he used this to create a new clone. And this clone, you could instantly assume, is 02, because they're lookalikes. They look very similar. For instance, 02, she looks exactly like the queen. But at the same time, though, there is other things that we can kind of put together, or piece together from that reveal. Number one, he says, if you knew the truth, 02, you would hate me, which is interesting. Why would he say that? Of all words or lines he could say, could be a translation issue, but out of everything that he could potentially say, he would say that, because you'd think at this point, 02 wouldn't really love or even like Dr. Frank. Probably hate him a lot. After everything he did to her, torturing her and all that, you would think that she automatically would hate this man. So, him saying you would hate me if you knew the truth, that makes you just scratch your head like, what do you mean there, dude? Are you saying that you're basically implying that you're her father? Is that why? Or is something else being implied? So, let me get into that. There's a couple of theories you can get from that ending sequence, which I want to mention. I want to go through each individual one. Either A, 02 is a clone of the Klaxosaur princess, just entirely a clone, no DNA added or anything, just a clone. Or B, she is a clone of the Klaxosaur princess with splicing of DNA from Dr. Frank, which would mean that they both are technically the parents of 02, which would be pretty messed up in a lot of ways. But then it brings into question, okay, what's going on with Hero, which that is the next thing. Going into option B, or C, actually, when I count the two others I just mentioned. Option C is, what if Hero was the one that was created by the DNA from the Klaxosaur princess? Now, I know many are going to say, but Chibi. 02 looks like the princess. I know. I know she does. That's why I said 99% sure most likely it is, the princess's, DNA used on 02 and Frank's. But the thing is, though, is that from what we've seen at the beginning of the story, like the first episode, we saw like this red Ani child, which looks exactly like 02, wandering on her own by herself, which implies that maybe she wasn't created by Dr. Frank. She might have been some form of like Klaxosaur born, a proper Klaxosaur being born, maybe an actual child to the Klaxosaur princess, and then she was discovered, Frank started experimenting on her. Because here's what I think is going on. I personally believe that maybe Hero is the individual that was the clone in the test tube at the end of the episode. Hear me out, okay? Hear me out. The reason why I think that is because from this episode, it's very clear that Hero looks very similar to Dr. Frank. Now, I'm not saying eye color. The eyes are obviously different in terms of color, but certain traits of their personality, like Hero wanting to know more information, to him kind of rising up against Papa in a lot of ways is kind of mimicking what Frank was doing throughout the episode. He was constantly saying, I'm an atheist, and all that. He was constantly just saying that, which, oh my god, that just so much meme material from that. But I mean, man's like, I'm an atheist. You can have a normal conversation. Hey, have you ate these veggies? Like, yes, I eat these veggies, and I'm an atheist. That's pretty much what he did in the episode. But jokes aside, though, pretty much, it wasn't his eye color. What really stood out was certain key personality traits, but also his hair. If you look at his younger version, how he looked when he was a kid, his face obviously looks very rugged or worn, But if you compare with Hiro and Dr. Frank, their hair is very similar. Like, style-wise, if Hiro grew out his hair, it would probably look like Dr. Frank's. And I was like, is that implying that Hiro is the son of Dr. Frank? Maybe even if they didn't use the blood. Like, okay, let's just say that, 02 is made, okay, by Dr. Frank, okay, with the DNA of the Klaxosaur Princess. There is still a possibility that maybe Hiro is the son or a clone of Dr. Frank. That's what I'm getting from that scene. Because when you see the scene where they're by themselves, it's just Dr. Frank and Hiro in the room, and they're side by side, and you see how they each have their heads turned. Just the way that looked, that entire scene, it looked like it was kind of implying that they were probably father and son in some way. That's what I was getting. And it would make a lot of sense why he would say, if you knew the truth, you would hate me, 02, is because if she knew that Hiro was based off of him, and as a clone of him, then she might hate him. I believe that maybe be what he's implying there. I could be wrong, but that's what I got from that scene. Now, here's the thing, too. Another theory to throw out there is that there is a possibility that, maybe Dr. Frank isn't 02's, father. And the reason why I'm saying that is because there's a likely possibility, and even if she is the DNA of the Klaxosaur Princess, that Dr. Frank's DNA wasn't used at all. What if it was Dr. Frank's wife that was spliced in with 02? Now, think about it like this, from this perspective. If Dr. Frank used his wife's DNA to carry on her legacy in some ways, used it on 02, and then also used the Klaxosaur Princess's DNA in 02, it would go along with the two X chromosomes, but also it would go along with the fact with the message of Dr. Frank's relationship with his wife. See, if Hiro is the son or a clone of Dr. Frank, technically you could say he is Dr. Frank, and 02 would technically be the wife, the deceased wife of Dr. Frank. And they're not blood related by any means, but they are, they're Frank and his wife in modern day, but as kind of clones, which would carry on their story, their love for each other in a different way, which I think would be pretty interesting if that's kind of what's being implied there after this episode. This episode is entirely focused on Dr. Frank's characterization and finding out more about him, which we needed that. We needed more details on Dr. Frank. He was a character that we didn't really know whose side he was on. It is stated that he is not a very ethical person. He is not someone that believes in God. He is not someone that, is very religious by any means. He is just someone that wants to further his research, see the absolute limitations of humanity, which fits with the whole category of mad scientist. Even though he does good things, he also does bad things. Even though he does bad things, he also does good things. So he is neither. He is not one side. He is just someone that tries to further his own motives, his own inventions, what he wants. But at the same time, he is not someone that lacks humanity. He is obviously someone that does care about human life or care about people in general, even though he does let his inventions or fascination with certain things drive him. For instance, the Klaxosaurs and stuff like that. You could clearly see from his interaction with his wife that he let the details of the Klaxosaurs kind of put his wife to the side. He cared more about what he was doing with Ape and furthering his research than actually being with his wife. So I do believe that he has problems. He's not perfect, but he does have humanity at the very least, because it is stated that he doesn't want to lose his reproduction organs. He wants to stay human. He doesn't want to go under the Immortality Project, which all of Ape and almost all of the adults in humanity have. For instance, being immortal, but they can no longer reproduce. And he is a regular human being. He is someone that is more of a cyborg now than human, but he did not undergo the operation of being what Ape is. So he's entirely separated from them, which is probably a good or a bad thing depending on where the story wants to go. But he also showed that he cared about his wife. When she died, you could see he was emotionally distraught, but at the same time, he continued his research, which shows and speaks a lot about him as well, that he didn't stop the method of research he was doing. Like, he was, testing out, people in the FranXX and all that, and he didn't stop doing that research. Many more people died after his wife inside of the FranXX. So that does prove that just because she died, it wouldn't stop him from going on with pursuing what he wants. So even the person he loved didn't stop his obsession with learning more about the human limits or stopping the Klaxosaurs and stuff like that. So, pretty interesting information overall. We also kind of find out the origins, or how the first attack on the Klaxosaurs, or their first appearance, how it was done, their first attack on humanity. See, the Klaxosaurs apparently came from Australia, which I think is very ironic because of how dangerous Australia is. Australia has always been that dangerous zone where if you go there, if you're not a native, you're gonna get messed up. Like, you're probably gonna get messed up. The wildlife there is not nice. That's not even talking about the weather. So, I mean, seeing Australia attacked, I felt like it's horrible it would happen to someone, but I thought out of all places that the Klaxosaurs would appear out of first, it would be Australia of all things. So they have a Klaxosaur problem. That's the origin story of it. But anyways, the Klaxosaurs, though, they appeared out of nowhere. There's really nothing stated on it. They were of human origin, at least from what we got from the information, from what, Dr. FranXX was, narrating. But at the very least, we do know that the Klaxosaurs, they appeared out of nowhere from Australia. They started attacking mining sites, which makes you assume that they were underground the entire time, and then eventually, after being disturbed by humanity, then they just came out of nowhere and just started destroying drilling sites and stuff. And it's even stated, thanks to drilling the magma, or the magma energy out of the ground, that the entire world started to undergo, like, turning into a desert. Which shows that what Ape was doing was not healthy for the planet at all. And the reason why the Klaxosaurs most likely attacked them is because they realized the planet was just getting destroyed, completely ruined. And this reminds me a lot of Gears of War for some reason. Hopefully I'm not the only one that thinks this, but because in the series, they were always mining this certain chemical, which was, emulsion. I think that's the proper name. It's been a while since I played Gears to play the campaign, but it was this yellow liquid which looks a lot like lava, and they were mining a lot of it, which then caused a lot of problems for the Locust. They discovered the Locust, so I'm seeing a lot of parallels to the Gears story with the Klaxosaurs and all that. Hopefully I'm not the only one. They remind me a lot of the Locust coming out of the ground out of nowhere. And then here you go. But, okay, so pushing the comparisons to the side for now, though, basically, we got the origin story of how the Klaxosaurs first attacked. We got to find out the dates and all that, and we do know that the dates of the series, that it takes place 100 years after first contact, so it's around, like, year 2130 something. That's somewhere like where the date of the series is taking place, so that's why the planet looks so messed up. We got the explanation of why there's a lot of deserts, why the environment's so messed up. We got explanation to, where the Klaxosaurs, where they first appeared at. I mean, overall, there was a lot of world building and details in this episode. I think many can appreciate that fact because it gives a lot of clarification to what happened, the backstory of the series. But that's about it when it comes to this episode. If there is a couple things to really mention, though, I do say I like Futoshi, what he did in this episode. He didn't try to take advantage of Kokoro. He's like, no, you're gonna be with Mitsuru and all that and stay with him. So I do like how he didn't try to take advantage, be, crusty and get in between Mitsuru and Kokoro's relationship, even though obviously he wanted to be with Kokoro. I do appreciate that a lot about his character. That does redeem him a lot and give him some characterization where he's not that crusty to do something that despicable. But that's about it. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you enjoy my content? If you do, please, subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. Love you guys. Please be safe. Chibi out.